Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another speed build for the Disney Save. Today we are going to be working on our very first castle for Sulani and also our very first Little Mermaid speed build. I'm very excited to be showing you guys a lot of the Little Mermaid content that I'm going to be putting out over the next couple of weeks. Pretty much largely just going to be sticking with the Little Mermaid until we get through everything and then switching to a new movie. I know for some worlds I like to bounce back and forth, but it is actually really my preference to stick with one movie at a time and go through all of the builds and characters for that particular world so that I can theme everything together and build everything in a very similar style. I was really excited to tackle this castle first. It's super iconic. A lot of people were asking me if this was even going to be included in the save file, but I don't really know where else we would put Ariel and Eric and their family if we didn't build this castle. So I'm excited to showcase what I've done for you guys here today. This is an absolutely massive build. It is going to be cutting around a little bit here and there as far as footage goes, just due to the general size of everything. There is literally so much here and a lot of hallways, extra bathrooms, bedrooms, staff member bedrooms, things like that that I just don't tend to include in these larger build videos. So of course the next video will be a tour video, so look out for that one so we can actually go through each and every individual room. But the castle is designed to house Eric, Ariel, Max, Grimsby, Carlotta, and the chef. So there is a little bit of a mix of castle staff similar to how we've done in the past with like the Beauty and the Beast castle. We have the main members of the household, and then there is a little bit more room to add a couple of other members to this household if you wanted to play around with who may be living here, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on because I know some of you are going to be asking me about a certain princess from a different movie. But first, let's just talk about the general creation process of getting this castle started. This was a really tricky build. It was actually the first one that I've attempted where I'm using round walls right off the go from the start. I did go ahead and watch some tutorials on people who are much better than me explaining how to use the round wall features in the game, but honestly, watching somebody do it on a YouTube video and then of course trying to attempt to do it yourself in practice, totally different things. Some of the tips were really helpful, but just in general, I am finding that the round walls are extremely difficult to use, and one of the things that's even more troubling than that is the fact that it sometimes can screw up the pathing of the homes. I used them a little bit in Moana's house, just kind of on the corners and the edges, and it created a huge pathing issue in that home that I really haven't been able to solve. So I'm hoping that that was a one-off glitch. At this time, I have not actually playtested this lot. I do foresee there being issues, but I'm hoping that it's not as bad as that lot was, considering that this one has far more round walls in use here. You'll see some of the major glitches that are occurring throughout the video coming here and there. One of the big ones is really just, it's so difficult. This isn't really a glitch really, but it's very difficult to draw round rooms and then connect them together. So much so that it might even make more sense in the future for me to just not opt for the round rooms. They're really cool in concept, but when you can't fit doors and windows that you really want to use and you can't connect them together super easily and you can't find a way to make it so that Sims can get in between each room without creating all these weird corners and walls, it's not even really useful at that point anymore. I've found a couple of different tricks that do help occasionally, but it depends on the size of the round room and a couple of different things like that. So there might be some builds coming in the future where it makes sense to just not use the round walls even if it is featured in the build, just for playability reasons. You'll also notice another really big glitch that was a major problem that was really annoying me, and it's that every time you try to move a round walled room, the foundation will glitch out and turn completely black, and then I thought it was stuck like that, so I kept having to redraw the rooms, and I only figured out later that it's really just like a graphics issue. If you save your lot and leave it and come back, it'll completely fix it, but for a while there I was getting very frustrated replacing round rooms over and over again. And then occasionally another really fun one is when you do move a round room and you try to place it in a different spot, all of a sudden the foundation pops out of the bottom of it and it's no longer round. There's like little pieces of flooring sticking out that change it so that it's just not round anymore. Really frustrating overall, especially trying to get all of the stairs to fit and trying to figure out how we're going to get this castle to flow naturally. And then just considering as a side side idea. The way that I tend to build castles is I really like to play with different foundation heights to make it look as tall and massive as possible, but I wanted this one to remain largely on one level so that I could have as much functionality as possible. One of the things that I tend to do for some of the older Disney princess castles, like the older movies such as Beauty and the Beast, I'll add a lot of towers and then pull them up at different height levels, but the problem with doing that is that you can't attach them to the main level floor, so then you end up with a lot of rooms and towers that are kind of by themselves and they end up being extra bedrooms and things like that. I wanted this castle to really be one big play area and be just a little bit different than some of the stuff that I've done recently. I'm really trying to get everything to sit on one level here, but also be as big as possible and also look the way that it's supposed to, because this is a very iconic castle. We do get quite a bit of footage from it in both the first Little Mermaid movie and the second one. People are very familiar with it just because of how unique it is and the fact that it has like this beautiful flowing spiral staircase that comes down into the water and the red roofs. It's just super iconic. And I know the live action Little Mermaid is coming out soon, so I know that this is going to be a really popular build once it does finally come out. And I really just wanted to hit it out of the park and have it be as recognizable as possible. I've also seen other people attempt this build in The Sims before versus some of the other ones that I've done where maybe I haven't seen anyone necessarily do like a build. For this one, I've seen recreations of it. I've also personally attempted recreations of it. And to be honest, I think that the game still has some limitations that make it so it's not fully possible to do it the way that it's completely intended, but the addition of the round walls really does fix a lot of the problems when trying to attempt this castle as far as likeness goes. So all in all, round walls, not a great first experience. Definitely will be using them in the future. They're difficult to use. I would almost put them in that category of landscaping, or excuse me, the terrain landscaping that we have in the game, which I like to call it's there, but it's basically broken because it's useless. It just causes so many issues that you almost don't want to use it. This is like leaning towards that category where it just doesn't feel very polished. It doesn't feel like it's working as intended. And so I tend to, as a builder, maybe want to stay away from it just to, I don't know, keep some sanity, but I will probably be using it when necessary. I know, for example, there's a future Little Mermaid build coming out in a couple of weeks. You guys will see it, but as of me creating this video, I've already done it. And I was originally going into it with round walls, and then I had to take some of them away because it was just a logistics nightmare. Now, when planning out Sulani in general, this has been a bit of a tougher process than I imagined because we had so many really great ideas and movies for this world. I had to tone it back as far as like the initial plan through of what I really thought this world was going to contain. One, because I love the Little Mermaid. So this was really my opportunity to do more Little Mermaid than anything else. Don't get me wrong, there will be plenty of other things included in Sulani, but it's my favorite film. At the end of the day, this is my save file, and I just wanted to include a few Little Mermaid builds. And there were some really great ideas that my community came up with that I absolutely could not pass up. So I knew that they were all going to be included. And that took away, I think, 3 or 4 lots in Sulani right away. But when you're planning, you also do have to think about what lots are actually using the water lots in this world. And this being Eric's castle, where it has this staircase that wraps around and it's known for coming out into the water, and there's a boat that sits kind of in the little lagoon harbor area there. It has to be on a water lot. And don't quote me on this, but I think this is the largest water lot in Sulani. So then if you think about it when you're planning, there's maybe only 3 or 4 lots that actually contain water. Maybe it's 5 or 6, maybe it's higher than that, but you do have to think about that when you're planning, like which lots actually need the water, which ones can I get away with adding my own maybe. And this is one of those castles where we just absolutely had to have it. So this is really the only place this castle could go. There is another lot that is a little bit bigger that has water on it, but it's shaped slightly different. It's not quite as square. So I knew that this had to fit here. Another thing that's a little bit interesting about this castle, like I said, we do actually get to see quite a bit of it from both of the films that Disney's produced. There is another Little Mermaid film, which I won't really be referencing in the Disney save very much. There is going to be one tiny little thing that I will be adding, which I'll be talking about maybe later in this video, but you guys will see in the next few weeks here. And it doesn't really ever show the side of the castle that faces the beach. You can see in the background that it faces almost like a village, and it sort of opens up into a village area. And there are some scenes in the first film where Eric and Ariel trail or going around through Eric's village. So you do get some of that, and it would have been nice to almost include a little bit of that in the backside of the castle just to give it some more life, but this lot truly was not big enough for that. I do have a little bit more space off the front area of the lot where the water comes out, and you might be wondering why I didn't pull it up all the way out into the water, and it's really the only reason is because the staircase is actually at the absolute maximum for where you're allowed to place staircases into swimmable water. So one tile more than that and I couldn't place the stairs down, and so it literally had to sit there. That is the point of no return, basically. Now, as far as references for this castle, of course, like I've mentioned a few times, I am using the first two Little Mermaid movies for creating this, but it's important to note that a lot of really talented artists have done many beautiful renditions of this castle in great detail and given it a lot more life, so I definitely used a lot of random fan art, 3D renders and creations. And then also Disney World has recreated this castle, and they made some slight changes that you don't really see in the movie, including some color differences and just some additional details and things, I think, to make it look more beachy and more mermaid life. So I've definitely used a combination of all of those things when creating this. And if you notice little things here and there that are not quite exact to the movie, it's not unusual for me to be using a combination of different references when it comes to building. So there is typically some small differences compared to what you're going to be seeing in the film. I also just like to add my own areas when I'm building if I feel like I can get away with it. Like I'm building this small area where I knew the boat was going to be coming out, or in the film where the wedding boat is off of the dock, that's like this side of the castle. And I knew when I was building it that that area downstairs was very likely going to end up being either a bigger bedroom or a kitchen or a combination of both of some kind. So I was trying to give myself a little bit more space and ended up adding more walls and taking away this back pillar that wasn't really working. One of the things I did notice when building is that there is definitely a lack of windows, in my opinion, for this castle, considering that it's literally sitting on the water with this gorgeous beach around it. Even in the film, it's a front water-facing castle, and it's beautiful, and I just can't imagine something like that being built without these like extravagant glass windows so that you could see out onto the water. But then when you actually go and watch the movie and you get some shots from the interior, like when they're sitting in the dining room, they do have these really giant glass windows where you can see out to the water, but you never actually get to see where those windows are as far as like on the castle exterior, because you don't even see them from the exterior. So I've added more windows than what was shown on the original exterior, but I tried to hide them into the nooks of the castle that are not as visible from the front so that you can get the best of both worlds. And also because immediately when I started to go in and do the interior, I realized that it was too dark in here. And again, I really just wanted it to be light, airy, beachy, and it wasn't going to give the vibe if there was just no windows to look out of, especially in some of the additional bedrooms and things like that. So the way that this castle is designed, and again, we'll be featuring a lot of the major rooms that you might think when we do the interior part of the build today. It is a very long video today, guys. I hope you enjoy it. I don't like to put out these longer videos, but most of the time you guys say that you love them, so hopefully you don't mind the length today. But I did cut quite a bit of the footage. However, we're going to be, of course, showcasing Eric's room, Ariel's room, the ballroom, the main bathroom that gets shown in the film. Normally I don't include bathrooms, but because this is kind of like an important scene in the film, I figured I would go ahead and keep that in. Eric's bedroom also has kind of like a library slash study above it, so I figured I would throw that in as well. But I think pretty much everything else, the kitchen, the many of the pathways and walkways, the additional bedrooms and things like that, didn't get included today, but it's really beautiful. I'm actually super satisfied with how it turned out on the interior, so I'm going to be doing, like I said, the tour video up next so you guys can see everything. And with that being said, one of the things that I always have to decide when I'm creating a build and when I'm adding a new family into the Disney save is where in the story that movie is currently as far as when I'm adding it into the build or when I'm adding them into the save. And this changes here and there. I don't start every character at the beginning or the end of their movie, and sometimes it's left up ambiguously enough that you can't really tell and it doesn't really matter. But for this one, I think just for planning the interior of this home and deciding that I was going to have Eric and Ariel only living here and Eric and Ariel would have separate bedrooms, it made sense that this is really going to be the beginning of Ariel's story. So Ariel does have her own bedroom in this build. Eric has his own separate one. And then what I have kind of planned here, and I'm going to be introducing something new to the Disney save. In the past, I've I've done something called bonus lots or extra lots or gallery exclusive lots, and they're basically just additional lots that you can add into a world if you want to change something, if you want a different version of something, or maybe we had a really great idea for the Disney save for a particular world and it just wasn't going to fit, but it didn't make like the original cut. So for example, one of the ways I've done this in the past is I have the original Toy Story 1 house in Evergreen Harbor, but I have built the second home, which is the home they use for the rest of the films, and that one is available on the gallery as a secondary download so that you can have the family grow up, get some more space, be able to utilize the second build. And up until this point, it has really just been 4 lots, which is already enough work as it is, and I feel like I've kind of shot myself in the foot with this idea because whenever we can't fit something, everyone's like, well, just make another one, just make something extra, do a bonus lot. And I'm like, well, yeah, I could do that, but at what point do we end this? Like, at what point am I just creating like 2 or 3 versions of the save? Neither here nor there. I do enjoy doing it, but for the most part, it's just been builds up until this point. And then now I've stumbled across the idea of doing this with characters as well. There's a couple different reasons for that. One of the main ones being that you are going to eventually start running out of space for Sims in the build, so I have to start thinking about what characters are maybe not as important and don't need to be included, but I know people are going to want them. And for the Little Mermaid, one of those characters is most definitely going to be Melody, who is Ariel and Eric's daughter that gets shown in the second film. I'm not including her because I am largely going to be staying away from Disney sequels for the remainder of the creation process of the save file, and I don't want to add her in as a townie because she's not really a townie. It doesn't make sense to see her just like freely roaming around this world, and I don't like that as a concept. So I'm going to be adding her to my gallery as a bonus sim. So if you follow me on the gallery, it's TomilynYT. It's going to be in my description box spelled out as well down below if you would like to follow me. I've been putting all of my builds up. Some of my Sulani builds and Moana and things like that are already live on the gallery for those of you who were asking. But now, in addition to the extra builds that I'll be putting on the gallery, I will be adding some Sims that will not be included in the save file, but they'll be there for purposes of storytelling. And one of them is going to be Melody. I've already made her. I will be making a creative sim video for her. She's aged up just a little bit because you actually can't make mermaids any younger than a teen, so she's slightly older than how she would be represented in her film. I was also a little bit worried about genetics. If you were to take my Ariel and Eric, who are soon to come, and try to create a baby and see what happens genetically, what that would actually look like, I was actually pleasantly surprised when I went ahead and created my Melody, I will have to say, but in general, tends to not work out. So I did agree as a compromise that I would make Melody and put her on the gallery for download, and I'll be adding all of her special traits and features and things like that in the future when I get some time to do so. There's another bonus sim that's Little Mermaid themed that my patrons know and have seen at this point, but I'm not going to be spoiling that. It is a few weeks yet to come. And so what you could do is we're going to be putting Eric and Ariel in separate bedrooms for this build today, but I think what I would personally do is use Ariel's room for Melodies if you were to go ahead with the storyline or move her into the household. There are other rooms on the lot available, but none of them are quite as big, and I just think it makes the most sense to do it that way. But I'm just kind of letting you guys know so that you know that I did plan at least for her to have some space, but she doesn't have her own bedroom in today's build. Now let me go ahead and talk about the interior a little bit here for a moment. So the first room we're starting off with is the dining room. I think this is a super iconic scene from The Little Mermaid. I was really excited to recreate this space, and I immediately jumped right into it and started using a reference from the film, and I just hated how harsh some of the colors were. A lot of the interior of this castle is like such dark wood tones and blacks and bright, harsh red, blue, like royal colors, which makes a lot of sense for, I guess, the time period and the nautical theming and like Eric in general. That's like his aesthetic, right? So if you think about the castle interior, maybe that is what it would look like. And I was trying originally to like go with it and just go and recreate it the way that it's shown in the film, but I just hated the vibe so much, and I thought it was like killing my exterior, which I was so happy with at this point. It was just so harsh and dark and dreary, and this is supposed to be like this beautiful airy castle on the beach, and I've kind of already done that interior when it came to Beast Castle. Beast Castle uses a lot of like deep, vibrant red, blue, purple, emerald green, and it's a little bit harsh and darker in tone, and I just built that castle. So putting that same interior into this one, I just hated the flow of it. So I made a creative decision here to just go ahead and switch some of the colors around a little bit, tone it back a little bit. So the color palette I went with is more whites, tans, light and airy, seafoam blues and greens. There is going to be some of those like harsher bright colors, especially in like Eric's space and here and there throughout the castle. But at the end of the day, this is like this gorgeous castle on the beach. And I have a feeling the live action has not come out at the point of me making this film. I haven't seen anything referencing what they're going to be doing with Eric's castle in the live action version, but I have a feeling, prediction, they are going to go with something similar to what I'm doing here on the interior. So someone who sees it later and comes back and ends up watching this video after the film comes out, yell at me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I think that this was the best creative decision. I posted it on my Patreon and kind of explained my thought process behind it, and none of my patrons yelled at me, so I think this was the best decision overall, especially considering like this other room that we're doing here, the ballroom, which doesn't actually get shown until the second film. It's like this bubblegum pink color in the film, and I did roll with that because it fit a little bit more in line with some of the tones that I was already using in the dining room, so I felt like I could get away with it a little bit more, but it really wouldn't have matched across the board if we were to go with like these deep emerald and black wood tone dining room, and then there's this bright pink ballroom. It was just gonna look a mess. So to keep the flow nice and even, I made a creative choice on this build. I hope you guys agree with me. I hope you guys like it. I think most of you will probably agree. Largely for as far as packs here, a ton of my wedding stories. I'm really enjoying the build and buy from that pack. I think it's a must have for builders, and it's going to be very heavy for the Disney save. If you're somebody who doesn't pick up every single pack when it comes to my save file, that's one you're going to want to grab. I'm going to be using it pretty much in every build, I would say, from here on out. It's got lots of beautiful curtains, the piano, the greenery. It's just going to work a lot for a lot of builds we have coming up. Cats and Dogs. Cats and Dogs has a huge like nautical theming. It's a little bit more East Coast US, but there's still some really great pieces in there that work for this. Get Famous with some of the gold accents, the chandeliers, the weird references that Gets Famous has to nautical as well, or more specifically like slight mermaid references and little seahorses and things on the furniture. Very odd, but I appreciate it in a build like this where I can just add those little bits of like sea life, pirate life, without it being overdone and overboard and like everywhere and just feeling like something that would come from like a beach home on the East Coast, right? That's not the vibe that we're going for here. We want it to be regal and subtle, but still definitely there, and has its own theming overall in comparison to all the other castles at this point that I've done in the save file. It feels like one in its own. Now we have quite a bit of time left in the rest of the video. We're basically just going to be doing the remaining of the interior for the rest of it. I'm going to give you guys a couple of life updates and talk to you about some things that are Disney related that have been going on in my life recently, so I hope you guys enjoy that. First of all, I just want to say I've really been missing streaming recently. I've really been missing connecting with a lot of you. I miss like being able to sit down and talk to you guys about things that are going on live and actually chatting with you guys and making friends and building actual relationships. So I just wanted to say like there's some huge nostalgia there for streaming, and I've also been thinking about, not that this is anywhere new or soon I should say, the end of the Disney save and like what I want to do when it's all over to showcase it and just do this like big tour video. I also would love to live stream it, but I don't want that to just be like one random stream that I did, you know, like I do miss streaming a lot. I wish I could go back to it. I cannot right now, but it's kind of on my list of things in the next few years to go back to. So if you're somebody who misses it, and maybe even if you're someone who doesn't really love I don't know if there's anybody like this, but if there's anybody who you almost enjoyed the streams more than the videos at this point, I just want you to know that I want to come back, and I think there's a really great possibility that I will at some point. I'm not in a position to currently. I am traveling a little bit too much. I got a little bit too much going on. I'm not really in my own space either, so it's not a great idea for me to participate in that. I don't think it will go well, so cannot right now, but it's been on my mind a lot, and when I was doing this build for some reason, it really just made me think about it, and this is a big movie for me to be doing, and I was excited to kind of like talk to you guys about it, so I hope I will be able to go back to that at some point. In other news, I recently got to go to Disneyland Paris. I was invited by my fiance's family on like their family vacation. They planned a whole trip there. They so graciously invited me to go along as well. Very kind. My first experience at any kind of a Disneyland type park. I've never been to Disneyland California, and my first time going outside of the UK for at all. Like, so I guess my first official time in the rest of Europe, France in particular. Now, this isn't obviously like a trip to France, right? Because you're basically, what we did is we went straight in onto Disney property and immediately left. So it's not like actually going to France. And I know that. And I want to go back. France is actually on my bucket list of like, I definitely have so many things that I want to do. The super touristy things, and like, I love the Moulin Rouge. Moulin Rouge is my favorite film, so I want to go. I've heard horrible things, I've heard great things, but I want to go. I want to experience the Eiffel Tower, things like that. So there's things to do in France outside of Disneyland, I know that, but I was really excited to, in general, just experience something other than Disney World, because I've just never been able to do so. It's currently the 30th anniversary, or the very end of it, for Disneyland Paris, so I got to catch the tail end of that. There's some special shows and nighttime performances and merchandise and things like that going, so I caught it at a really great time. And I have to say how nice it was to go on a trip where you don't have to plan every single little detail to the death. My fiance and I went to Disney World in November of last year, and we spent literal months planning this trip to the T to make sure nothing would go wrong. We would get everything we wanted, go everywhere we wanted, do everything. We were going to be there for weeks, so we just had so much time and so many things planned, and it's a little exhausting. I like it. I'm a planner. I like a spreadsheet. I like to sit down and do that kind of stuff, but even after a while, it's like, wow, have I overdone it? Is this too much? And it was nice to just be invited on a vacation and just go with the flow and not really worry about it. I didn't really research Disneyland Paris too much because, to be honest with you, it's close enough to me now and where I'm moving in the UK that it's very accessible. I'll be able to go back, and I felt like if there was something that I missed or didn't get to do, my fiance and I will go back and we'll eventually get to do it. So I wasn't too worried about all those little things. And also, in general, you know, I do the save file and things like that, so I was just excited to see more Disney themed buildings and have more references for my save file and more ideas. I set my expectations super low when it came to going, just because I'm used to Disney World. It's very extravagant there. It's super expensive. It's just like, some people go and it's like a once in a lifetime experience. I've been very lucky that I've gotten to go twice now in my life, but I just didn't think it would really be all that compared to Disney World, you know what I mean? I was pleasantly surprised. I actually highly recommend people, if you are thinking about a Disney World trip or Disneyland trip, maybe consider doing it. It's obviously a little bit more accessible, like I said, for me here. Those of you who are living in the UK or Europe, if you've never been and you like Disney, I really think it's worth the go. I was so surprised at how much fun I had, how much I almost enjoyed certain aspects more than Disney World. I just thought it was going to be like a not as cool Disney World, if I'm completely honest with you guys, but it actually does some things a lot better. A couple of my favorites, there is this really cute ride. I'm not even going to try to butcher the name of what this ride is called in French, but it's like this boat ride where you just sit down. It's meant for kids. It's cozy, and you go around on a little boat and they show you all these like miniature scenes and castles from the different Disney films and just fairy tales in general. I absolutely loved this ride. It's in the Fantasyland section of Disneyland. A lot of the rides are almost similar or almost exactly the same, but then there will be some slight differences that make it really just cool enough that you want to experience it the second time. One of them being the Haunted Mansion, which we know we love here on my channel. I've done a ton of Haunted Mansion content, and I love the original Haunted Mansion. I was really excited to ride Phantom Manor, is what it's called, in Disneyland Paris. And I gotta say, you guys, I think they did it better. Like, it's just, I mean, it's a little bit newer, right? The park's only been open for 30 years, so it's running a little bit better, and the technology is a little bit cleaner. It's very similar. There's just some slight differences, but I actually think it's better. It felt longer as well. And I believe, at least, I don't know what happened, but when you enter into that initial room that has the walls that is supposed to make you feel like the walls are moving up, in the Disney World one, I believe the walls are moving, but you're not. You're meant to feel like you're like going down almost. In the one in Paris, you are actually moving down, I believe. It felt like we were actually on an elevator. I don't know if maybe just the technology is working a little bit better because it's newer. Maybe Disney World needs an update, but I just thought it was better. I did. However, my favorite Fantasyland ride, Peter Pan, butchered it. Not good. Really, just they took out some of the best parts. It's slower, or I should say quicker, like you get through the ride a lot quicker. Not super impressed with it overall. And the other thing I gotta say is that Disneyland Paris, do not go for the food. That's not the scene. I was very underwhelmed. I read reviews online. I did like a little bit of research on where to eat, things like that. And people basically said, if you're used to Disney World food, you're not going to be impressed here. And I totally agree. It's very, very lackluster, but everything else, really great. The castle, Sleeping Beauty's castle, guys, it's gorgeous. I took so many photos. I'm so excited to recreate it in the save file. The version that they have at Disneyland Paris is definitely the one that I'm going to be using for the save. I loved it. You can explore it from head to toe. So versus like Cinderella's castle, where you can really only walk through the main part of it sometimes, like straight through it. This one is meant to be explored. There's a whole upstairs area with stained glass and Beauty and the Beast memorabilia, or excuse me, Sleeping Beauty memorabilia. There's a downstairs dungeon area with Maleficent's dragon and animatronics. It's incredible. And the other thing they do slightly better are the shows. They're a little bit longer. They're more intricate. I like the obviously multilingual aspect of it. They have this absolutely amazing Marvel show that they use with drones that's brand new, that I was lucky enough to see over in Hollywood. I was going to call it Hollywood Studios. Walt Disney Studio, which is the other park there. There's only two. There's Walt Disney Studio and then there's Disneyland. They're right next to one another. You don't even need a park hopper ticket, I believe, to get back and forth between the two of them. We were constantly jumping back and forth all day, depending on what was going on. But yeah, there's an Avengers campus there. Really just a great 9 out of 10 experience overall. There are some little things that I didn't like. I spent less money because there's less shopping. There was less things to buy. I can appreciate that. I don't really want to go to Disney World and spend thousands of dollars all the time anyway. But all in all, I'm really excited. I took some great photos. I'm going to be taking some stuff from that park and adding it into the save file. My trip there made me realize that I definitely need to be putting some kind of a small world reference somewhere. If we do a park, a garden, something like that, just a reference to it. It doesn't have to be like a whole recreation, but it's so iconic. It has to go somewhere. I got to eat at the Ratatouille themed restaurant where you're made to feel like you're shrinking down to the size of a rat, and everything in the restaurant is oversized, and like the plates are the chairs, and it's just beautiful. If you're on my Patreon or if you're a patron, I posted a lot of photos and a lot of thoughts as my Atlantean and up tiers. So if you want to check all of that out, it is there. But I'm definitely going to be using stuff like that in the save file. And I want to maybe include some references to Peter Pan's Flight because it's my favorite. It's one of my favorite rides, so I think it has to exist somewhere, not in this world, but Windenburg's a really big world, so I think we have lots of space coming up in the future here. And there's like this whole Alice in Wonderland section in the Fantasyland there. They had a beautiful maze garden. They have a castle for the Queen, and I just loved the vibes there. I was very impressed. I want to go back. I want to take more photos, get some more time to explore that area in particular. The Alice in Wonderland like section of Fantasyland. It was pouring that day that I was there, so I didn't have it in me to really like linger and take lots of photos, but I promise you some things and some stuff from that side of Fantasyland will be making some appearances coming up in the save file. I have so much more to say about my trip there. It was a really, really great experience. I'll be sharing more of it in videos to come, but we are actually closing out the end of the video here, finishing up with Ariel's room. You do get to see that this is the actual location of her room per the movie because she comes out on her little balcony out there and was looking down on Eric on the beach. So I knew that room had to be hers, created this whole area in front of it. So she's got lots of her own space. There's a bathroom on this floor, and we actually had some really great reference for her bedroom. So it is a general 1-for-1 recreation compared to the actual film versus Eric's room where we really just had basically no reference. So this one I was able to really copy it over, and that's why I think it looks a little aesthetically different than a lot of what I've done in the rest of the castle, but it's my one and only shot to kind of recreate it as what it's supposed to be, so I feel like if I do have the reference for it, I might as well go for it. And that is all I have for you today. The next video will of course be the tour video for this castle, so stay tuned for that if you're excited to see more of this gigantic build, and I have more Little Mermaid things coming up in the next couple of weeks. If you would like to support me and the Disney Save, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box down below or the one at the end of the video for my Patreon and receiving extra perks, early access to my private Discord where we do all things Disney Save and Disney related. Would love to have you there. Thank you all so much for watching today, and I will talk to you all in the next one.